preparing for this reflection, I thought of an experience I have every time I go to the marketplace to buy things. In my part of the world, merchants often don't put a fixed price on their items because they expect you to haggle for prices. It is a way of establishing connections, so that next time you buy something, you tend to return to the same seller for what you need. Let me connect this experience with some insights our readings for today give us. What is striking about our readings for this Sunday are the practical lessons we are receiving on prayer. These are the points I wish to highlight. First, prayer as relationship. Second, prayer as openness. And third, prayer as persistent appeal to God. The word relationship has many shades of meaning depending on its usage. It is clear when we say that prayer is a relationship, that the immediate partner in this relationship is God. This relationship does not happen overnight, nor does it develop automatically. It involves establishing a connection as a way of beginning. As in prayer, it involves an encounter with one another. God, being God, knows us through and through, but often we do not know ourselves enough to enter into an intimate kind of relationship. Relationship goes beyond knowing only about the other. It means I allow myself to be known by the other. In our first reading, how does Abraham know God at this point in his story? While God has made specific promises to Abraham, God has also promised to work blessings for all the families of the earth through him. For Abraham, there is already a relationship that was building up based on his trust in God's word. In the gospel, Jesus teaches us that prayer is first and foremost a relationship between God and us, a relationship built on love and trust, not on fear. Unless we believe in the goodness of God, we cannot pray the Lord's Prayer from our hearts. In faith, we ask God to provide for our needs as we learn to live our life one day at a time, trusting in God's care and protection. The second point, prayer as openness. In our readings, Abraham stands before God's presence with openness about his questions in an effort to understand what God's response will be to human sinfulness. While Luke's gospel presents us with Jesus teaching his disciples the essential rudiments of prayer, which begins with an open attitude before God, addressing God as Father. Here we see two attitudes of openness: openness with God and openness to God. Openness with God means I am free in sharing, conversing, complaining, or even bargaining with God. I am free to be who I am, to be openly honest about how I feel and think, just like being with a friend. In this developing friendship, I become more at home with God and with myself. I become more open to God about everything in my life as I come to know myself. In Luke's gospel, Jesus gives his disciples a model for prayer that reflects these two attitudes of openness. Jesus teaches that to be in relationship with God, we must respect who God is and to be open to God. He likewise teaches us to share openly with God our material needs and relationships, as well as our temptations and struggles with evil. The third point, prayer as persistent appeal to God. When a more intimate relationship is established, we also feel the freedom of appealing to God in order to gain favors or answers to our questions. For instance, Abraham appeals to God and bargains with him for the sake of those immersed in an evil atmosphere. In this exchange between God and Abraham, it is clear that Abraham keeps arguing from the perspective of justice, while God, in his response, keeps demonstrating his mercy and reassures Abraham that God will not act hastily, but will instead act justly and mercifully. Here, prayer is presented to us as persistent appeal to God. Persistent prayer may not get an immediate response from God, but it reveals something about the divine nature, which is that of mercy and forgiveness. Jesus, after teaching his disciples how to pray, told them to be persistent, to ask in order to receive. Like Abraham, we are to continue standing before God, to ask God persistently for what we need. By begging persistently, we put ourselves in an open stance to receive. Through the Lord's Prayer, Jesus is showing us that a short prayer addressed to the Father with great sincerity, openness, and persistence can be as powerful as a long one. So prayer as relationship, prayer as openness, and prayer as persistent appeal to God.